So to start off, how many of you know what this is? Has anyone seen this graph before? Anyone? This graph, specifically this point on the graph, is when Facebook knows that you have begun your next relationship. Whether or not you have explicitly told Facebook that you have started a new relationship. So how do they know this? They know because of these little black dots. Those little black dots are the number of timeline posts between you and another Facebook user. And the horizontal axis is time. So specifically, the 100 days leading up to the start of your relationship is what's being shown in this graph. So what's interesting to me here is, when does Facebook, within that 100 days, when does Facebook know that you're about to start a new relationship? Is it, quite possibly, before you yourself know? And, perhaps more importantly, who owns this information? Who owns this data? It's very valuable data, right, about you, insight about you. So Facebook released this in a blog post, and on the comments, Wendy Ranwai said, "Is this anonymized data publicly available? Can we look at the anonymized data?" And Facebook responded by saying, "Sorry, we don't even release anonymized data. It's strictly for our own internal use." So who owns this information about you? Well, it's very clear, right? Facebook owns this information. Now, if you've been following Facebook, at the start of this year, they bought a messaging application called WhatsApp for $19 billion. Why was this messaging application worth $19 billion to Facebook? What did they buy? At the time, there were about, I believe, like 450 million people. Now there are over 600 million using it. What they bought were the phone numbers of all of those people, but much more importantly, the right to eavesdrop, to listen in on all of their future conversations. That's very valuable, 600 million people having conversations. And guess who's listening in? Facebook. Why? Because they want to learn more about them. So you might say, Aral, so what? It's fine, I trust Facebook, I'm sure they're great people, right? So let's take a look at one of the great people that set it up, Mark Zuckerberg. He gave an interview with The New Yorker, and in 2010, when he admitted to having had an instant messenger conversation while at Harvard when he first started Facebook. And the conversation went something like this. There's Zuckerberg going, "Yeah, if you ever need info about anyone at Harvard, just ask. I have over 4,000 emails, pictures, addresses, SMS messages." I mean, it was a long time ago, SMS. And the friend goes, "What? How did you manage that one?" And Zuckerberg goes, "Well, people just submitted it. I don't know why. They trust me." And here's the best bit. Dumb fucks. That's a beautiful term, isn't it? Dumb fucks. Now, I'm sure this was when he was younger and Facebook was small. I'm sure that the intervening years of astronomical fame and fortune have only made him more reflective in his opinions towards people. But maybe not, because if you've been following recently, there was a big scandal when Facebook published a scientific paper and said, people realized that they were running experiments on emotion, on an emotional contagion, trying to study an emotional contagion. So what they were doing was, they wanted to see if you only saw negative posts on your timeline, how that would affect your emotions, how you would respond, or if you only saw positive ones. Now, this is no small thing, right? Manipulation of emotion is not something to be taken lightly. 60% of suicides are preceded by a mood disorder, right? So this is no small thing. So people got very angry. They were like, "How could you do this?" And Facebook said, "Oh, we're sorry. We're sorry." But what did they apologize for? "My co-authors and I are very sorry for the way the paper described the research and the anxiety it caused, not for the research, because they can't apologize for that. Because what people didn't understand or don't understand is this was not a one-off. This is just one piece of research that they published. They do this all the time. It's their business model, right? So Sheryl Sandberg said, Facebook study was poorly communicated. She says, this was part of ongoing research companies do to test different products. In other words, we do this all the time, right? And that was what it was. We're going to keep doing it, right? It was poorly communicated, and for that communication, we apologize. And I love this bit. We never meant to upset you. She could have completed that sentence, dumb fucks. And maybe they're right, because if you look at some of the media coverage over it, should Facebook manipulate users? Let me think about that for a moment. Maybe they should. Maybe that's a good thing. No, right? So you might say, Aral, so what? Facebook is an optional service. I don't have to use it, right? It doesn't really affect life in general or anything. It's just this little toy. I beg to differ. Our relationship with computers has altered fundamentally in the last 30 years, right? Computers were these external, impersonal devices, right? Today, we wear them on our persons. You don't get more personal than that, right? There was a time when they were disconnected from each other, and they were disconnected from the world around themselves. Today, they're always on, always seeing, always listening. They have a plethora of sensors. They know where they are. They're connected to each other, and they're connected to the world around them. Today, I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that we are cyborgs. And I don't mean that we inject ourselves with technology, no. But we extend our biological abilities via technology. And we use that to experience the world. We filter the world through our technologies, and we manipulate the world through our technologies, right? If they work well, they empower us. They let us do awesome things. If they work badly, they enfeeble us. They stop us from doing things. So today, these tools and technologies are not optional. They're essential to participating in modern life. And that's a very big distinction. That is a very, very big distinction. So if it's that important, who owns these tools? I'm coming back to the same question. Who owns these tools? Today, it's a handful of companies, right? Apple, Facebook, Twitter, Google. And what is common about them? They're all closed. And a subset of these companies, so Facebook, Twitter, Google, they also share a business model. The same business model. The business model of free products and services. Free as in cost. So you might say, Aral, so what? We love free. Who loves free here? Who loves free shit? Yeah? No? No? Nobody's admitting it. They're like, something's coming. There we go. Some honesty. That's great. So if you love free stuff, you're going to love this product that we're about to release. It's awesome. It's called Snail Mail. All right? And with Snail Mail, we have solved a very, very important problem. We've solved the problem of real mail. That's right. Snail Mail will give you free, real mail forever. You can send as many letters as you want, as many packages as you want, to as many people around the world, free forever. Who thinks it's a great idea? Who would use snail mail? Yeah? Look at that. Now you're excited. You're like, free shit. There is a caveat. Yeah. You saw that coming, right? We do open your letters, okay? And we do read them. But the only reason we do that is so that we can give you helpful hints and suggestions from what we understood. It might be wrong. We don't know. But from what we've understood, we just want to help you, right? And then we put all this back in the envelope, and you wouldn't even know that we were there, and we just send it off. Who'd still use snail mail? There's always one. I'm waiting for the hand. There we go. He's like, you should see his face. This is awesome. He's like, oh God, I know I would. I would use it. Yes. Take my data. The rest of you use Gmail, right? Who uses Gmail here? Right? Now, There isn't a person sitting through reading all of the emails at Google, but there are computers. There are algorithms. So that's Snail Mail, right? Tell your friends about it. It's at snailmail.com. I think they're going to love our service. I think it's just really great. You might say, Aral, so what? So what? OK, Google reads our email, and I'm OK with that. I'm willing to make this choice for myself that I will give up an amount of my data, an amount of my privacy in exchange for a free service. Why do you care? It's my decision. Well, it's not really. Because the decision that you're making is not just that it's OK for Google to read your email. You've also made the decision that it's OK for Google to read the email that everyone else sends to you. So you've made the decision that it's OK for you to receive a free service, and in exchange for that, Google gets to spy on all of your friends and all of your work colleagues and anyone who emails you there. And if you're using a custom domain, they may not even know that Google is going to read their email. You've made that decision for them. So in that way, it's not just a personal decision. It's much more like smoking and secondhand smoke. It also affects the people around you. So why does Google do this? Are they a bunch of really evil people in a cellar somewhere, you know, with like an evil laugh? Someone's going, yeah, they are. Yeah, that's what they are. Sorry. OK. Let's say not, right? Because we don't need that. They're only doing this because it's their business model. There's no conspiracy theory here. You don't need conspiracy theories when you have the simplicity of a business model. It's simply their business model. That's how they make money. It doesn't get any simpler than this, right? So just like the mutant plant from outer space in the musical Little Shop of Horrors that starts off as a little sapling that needs drops of blood to grow and then ends up eating whole human beings, Google needs data to grow. And how do they get that data? Via services, right? Google started out as a sapling, as a search engine. They weren't even tracking you when they first started. But today, they're a very different company, aren't they? There are a plethora of services that they offer. Do you want some place to put all your photos? Put them on Picasa. Will Google be running facial recognition to understand who you are and who your friends are? Yes, of course. Why? That's how they make their money. Do you want somewhere to put all of your files? Put it on Google Drive. Will Google look through all of your files to get to know you better, to understand you better? Yes. It's how they make money. What do you want to do? You want to talk to your friends? Go on Google Chat, on Hangouts. Will they be watching? Yeah. Their algorithms will be watching to get to know you better. Same with Gmail. There are games. The way that you volunteer this information, sometimes it's through games. Who's used reCAPTCHA here? reCAPTCHA, you know those CAPTCHAs on forms that protect the form, valuable service. But what's happening? You get something like that letter 7 there, right? That's a letter that Google Street View has photographed, but they can't read it, right? For some reason, it's illegible. So they're like, we'll protect your form, but why don't you tell us how to read this? OK, that's fine. You're kind of like, yeah, it's a game. It's nice. They have actual games as well. Who's played Ingress here? Anyone? Yeah. Ingress is this game where you walk around. It's a free game, Android game. You download it. You walk around town, and there's been an alien invasion. And you have to find all of these various places and hack into them, these landmarks, right? So you're playing this free game with your friends, and you're walking around. You're trying to find places in the city. What's Google doing, though? What's actually happening is you're giving Google very hard-to-come-by data on pedestrian walking patterns. That's hard to come by data, right? They can't get that themselves. They don't have the resources. So they give you this app, and they go into the world. Go, show us how you walk around the city. Let us watch you. Let's see how you play, right? So you might say, Aral, wow, that's terrible. I don't want to be a lab rat. I'm going to stop using their services. And then they've lost. Google can't lose. So what's the next step? OK, so you can stop using our services. It's too easy. What can we do? We can give you devices. Now, this is great, because if I give you a beautiful device, like a Nexus phone, what I've done is I've made your sign-in, your login to your device, your Google username and password. So now, it doesn't matter what service you use, I will still get some data from you, right, as long as you use the device. That's awesome. We're getting more data now. Same with their tablets, same with their Chromebooks, which they're trying to push into schools now. And it doesn't scare you. I don't know what will. But you can say, Aral, okay, wow, their devices. I'm going to stop using their devices. And then they've lost. Google can't lose. They need data. So what's the next step? If you need data to grow, what is your end game? We had services, we had devices. What's your end game? Connectivity. Now, if I connect you to the internet, like with Google Fiber, and I make your sign-in to the internet your Google username and password, it doesn't matter what device you use. I will still get some valuable data, right? So that's what they're trying to do with Google Fiber. But what about the next 5 billion? Have you guys heard of this term? Next 5 billion? I love it. It's so greedy, isn't it? It's like next 5 billion. How about these poor people in parts of the world that we've never visited, who apparently, we heard, cannot get on the internet and have no means of doing so by themselves because they're probably quite incompetent. So maybe the white man can bring them the fire, right? So how is the white man going to bring them the fire? With balloons. I don't know if they thought about that because the balloons could burst. But Google Loon, I'm not kidding. Google Loon, they actually called it Google Loon. They're also looking to satellites, right? If this is not neo-colonialism, I don't know what it is. But also, imagine that there might be in the future a whole nation whose only notion of the internet is something that you sign into with a Google username and password. This is already happening. Facebook has internet.org. They're already starting a program where people can get a portion of the internet, which includes Facebook and a few other carefully chosen services, for free. They just sign into it with their Facebook username and password, right? So that was data about you. What about data about the world? They also need that, right? And they have ways of getting it. They have satellite imagery, which is really nice. We all use it, Google Earth, etc. They have Google Maps, right? And then they have Google Street View. Who's seen the Google Street View car driving around? Yeah, it's kind of cool, right? There's a Google Street View car. They go around, they drive, and they get data about the world. But there are places the Google Street View car cannot go, which is why they have the Google Street View trike. But unfortunately, there are places you cannot go to with a trike, and you need the data. So they have a Google Street View snowmobile. And if you can't go there with a snowmobile because maybe it's indoors, that's fine. They have the Google Street View trolley for indoors, for museums, etc., and corridors. And there's some places you can't go with a trolley. So they have the Google Street View backpack. They will get the data, right? One way or another. But there are probably 2 places that they cannot go because you will not let them. One, probably, although this is changing a lot, is your workplace. You probably won't let them if they show up at your door. And if they show up at your home wearing one of these backpacks, and hopefully because of it, you will not let them in, right? I say hopefully because somebody did a parody. They pretended to be Google, and they went around and they knocked on people's doors and they said, Google Street View, can we come in? And some people said yes. So do not underestimate what people will do. But let's say that all of you intelligent people here who are, up to date with all this, you would say, no, thank you. And that's why they need you. If they can't get in, they can still use you. You have access to your home, right? Who's heard of Project Tango, their latest mobile phone project? So Project Tango is a phone. It has a depth-sensing camera, right? So you buy it, subsidized price, of course. You take it home with you, you walk around, and it maps your home in 3 dimensions. It starts recognizing the objects in your home. And of course, shares it with Google, and you can play games and stuff in your own living room in 3D. It's really nice, right? They've got a map of your home, including all the objects that are in it. And for that, they used you, right? You're very valuable to Google. We love you. So just like Audrey 2 from Little Shop of Horrors needs blood to grow, free services need your data to grow. It is simply their business model to make money from you, right? Their business is to spy on you. So The business of free is the business of surveillance. The two cannot be separated. And we used to have a term for this. I think we've forgotten it. In the personal computing era, with personal computers, when you installed a piece of software that said it was going to do something, but it did something else, and it took your data and it sent it to other people, we had a word for this, and we've forgotten it. We used to call it spyware, right? And it was very easy to identify it as malware, and it was malware. But spyware 2.0 is much harder to identify, because spyware 2.0 is all colors of the rainbow. It's cute kittens. Spyware 2.0 is doodles. Spyware 2.0 loves you. And so it's very hard to recognize what it is. But it is spyware. Eric Schmidt said, he's the executive chairman of Google, "We know where you are, we know where you've been, we can more or less know what you're thinking." This was about 4 years ago, or an eon in internet time, as we call it. And what we've done, what these services have done, is we've redefined what private means. The meaning of the word, we've redefined it. Now, private used to mean, let's say you want to have a chat with your friend, right? Private used to mean you get together, and then you'd have a chat, right? And it would be just between the two of you. That's a private conversation. Would everyone agree with that definition of private? Pretty old definition of private. Now let's take a look at what Facebook private means, right? When you go on Facebook and you have a private chat with someone. Has anyone done that ever? Has anyone said anything there that they wouldn't want on that screen right now? Maybe? Yeah? Okay, so you might think, but Aral, it's fine, right? I mean, this is Facebook private. I have my friend, I say something to my friend replies, and that's it, right? Nobody else knows. No. Because for one thing, you're not having it in a public sphere, like a park. You're having it in Facebook's home, which is a private space, kind of like a shopping mall, right? In their home. And you're not talking directly to each other. You have a creepy uncle in the middle. And here's how it works. You tell the creepy uncle what you want to tell to your friend. Your creepy uncle goes, "Got it, let me make a note of it, thank you very much," and then says, "Hey, here's what your friend said," right? Quite different. So, in fact, what Facebook private actually means is public. When Facebook say private, they mean just between us. That's not what private means. That's public, right? Private means for you alone. So in order to understand what Facebook says, or when we use Facebook, in order to understand what private means, we have to engage in what George Orwell called in his novel 1984, doublethink. Without doublethink, we cannot understand what Facebook means when they say private. We have to engage in it. And in this system, who are you? Well, we saw that you're the lab rat, right? But you're also the quarry that's being mined. You've probably heard you're the product being sold. Yes, you are. But you're the quarry being mined. You are the livestock being farmed in this system, right? And why? Is it just your data? No. Your data are just the atoms. They're valuable, but it's raw materials. What happens when we combine all of those pieces of data together? We start creating a profile of you, right? That's what's valuable. That's the most valuable thing. Just like raw materials are valuable, but the things we build from them, what we extract, the value we extract is greater, same here. So what can we do with that? Why is that important? Think about it this way. I can't take you, right, and I can't put you into my lab, and I can't run experiments on you and psychoanalyze you 24 hours a day to find out what makes you tick, who you are, how I can then manipulate you for profit. I can't do that because we have laws against it. Our corporeal selves, our bodies, are protected, are well protected by a system of laws. If I was to do that to you, it would be called kidnapping, and I would be put in jail if I was caught, right? But what if I had so much information about you, and high-fidelity information, that I could start building a virtual you, a profile of you, a digital you, your digital self, what I call your simulation? What if I got it to a point where it was such a high-fidelity simulation of you that for all intents and purposes, it is you, everything but your body? I can take that, I can put that in my lab, and I can do whatever I want to it, because that currently has no rights. That's one of the things that we need to change, because this is not where you want to end up. And you might say, well, Aral, you know what, so what? At least they're not sharing it with the government, right? Well, as we all know, that's not true, right? After 9/11, a lot of things changed. A lot of data retention policies came into place. In the US, they founded this agency, the Information Awareness Office, right, with the explicit purpose of gaining total information awareness. This is their actual logo, or it was, right? Now, let me tell you something. If you're going to create a government agency to spy on everyone and learn about everything, don't make this your logo. Really, don't. Like with a pyramid and all-seeing eyes shooting laser beams at the world. People get scared. So people got scared. And the government said, oh, no, we were just kidding. We'll just close that down. And they said they closed it down. But as the Edward Snowden revelations have shown, the NSA really needs to hire a PowerPoint designer. They do. But beyond that, they were sharing that information. There's actually one more thing that this slide, I love it. There's one more thing we need to really appreciate, okay? It doesn't happen every day, and I think credit where credit is due, right? Microsoft was first at something. That rarely happens. I mean, that's really, they deserve some applause there. And what were they sharing? Golf claps from the front. What were they sharing? Everything. Everything that we thought was private, right? Why? Why were they doing that? Well, because it's so much easier for the government to ask someone like Facebook for data that you have volunteered to them than it is to go and surveil you directly, because your data, when you volunteer it to a third party, is not under the same legal protections. And it's in one place. So that makes it cheap. It makes it cheaper for them to do that. So if we're going to tackle this problem, we need to make it expensive for them to spy on everyone. As Bruce Schneier, the security expert, says, the NSA didn't wake up and say, let's just spy on everybody. They looked up and said, wow, corporations are spying on everyone. Let's get ourselves a copy of what they're doing, right? So without what they're doing, it would not be as inexpensive for the government to spy on everyone as well. So I guess if this is the case, then the people who run these companies must be really worried about this, and they must really think deeply about it and want to protect you, right? So let's hear again from Eric Schmidt. He says, there's been surveillance for years. I'm not going to pass judgment on that. It's the nature of our society. Okay, Eric, so what should we do then? How should we approach this?
If you have something that you don't want anyone to know, maybe you shouldn't be doing it in the first place. Maybe you shouldn't be doing it in the first place.
If you have something you don't want anyone to know, maybe you shouldn't be doing it in the first place. Why didn't we think about this? Problem solved. You can all go home, right? Now, I know Eric, and Eric is a stand-up guy. He didn't just say this, right? He wanted to prove to the world that he believed this, truly. So he took some of his own photos, his personal photos, some of his own personal videos, and he created certain websites where he wanted to prove to the world that if you have nothing to hide, then it's fine. So some of my favorite websites that he created with his own personal data was ericstoiletantics.com, some very interesting photos there and videos, not my kind of thing, but, and then his other website was ericsfavoritesexytimes.com. He has some zany adventures. But my favorite one of all of these websites was ericsmasturbationadventures.com. You'll never believe the stuff he does. Now, these websites don't exist. And if there are any developers in the room, nor should they exist. Because privacy is not about whether you have something to hide or not. Privacy is about having control over what you keep to yourself and what you share with others. And it's important. It's important enough that we codified it in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in Article 12. And so these companies, when you look at them, they're out there and they're going, yeah, the government should stop spying on you. And we've created this coalition and that coalition, and we're doing all of these events to say that the government should stop spying on you, right? Look at that. Google lead coalition demanding limits on government surveillance. What is this? In magic, we have a term for it, right? It's an old trick. It's called misdirection. Look over there. Look at what they're doing. Yeah, forget the fact that we're doing exactly the same thing, right? And that's our business model. No, look at the evil government that's doing it. So free is a lie. It's a lie because it's a concealed barter. You're bartering something, but the value of what you're bartering is not made available to you. You're bartering on incomplete information. But it's more than that. It's a con. It's a confidence trick. Textbook definition. Michael Novak, a product manager at Facebook, says, now we're thinking about privacy as a set of experiences that make people feel comfortable. Comfortable with what, you might ask? Comfortable with the fact that you don't have privacy. In other words, a con. The whole system is a con. If you think about the venture capital cycle that creates it, I have a startup, right? I want to create a new startup. What do? I formulate my exit strategy. I haven't got my company yet. I am thinking about my exit. That's what I go to my investors with and say, this is how I'm going to sell the people that I get. How much will you give me for those people? Because I think I'm going to have 2 million or 10 million, right? How much will you give me for those people? And they go, we'll give you $1 million now because we want 10 million back, right? You sold them from day zero. And then what do you have to do, though? You need to build your platform. So you go out and say, we have a lovely little platform, and it's got this really cute cartoon character. Would you like to have an account? Knowing full well that you already sold them. That's a con. And unfortunately, it's worse than a con. It's a monopoly. This business model, Google may not be a monopoly, I might disagree, but this business model is a monopoly. I don't like Google. I'm going to start using Yahoo. What's Yahoo's business model? I don't like that. I'll use Facebook, same thing. Snapchat, same thing. Whisper, Secret, same thing. And they're getting even more codified, right? Snapchat. But they delete the photos. No, they don't. They delete it from your device, not their servers. And it's worse than that, because what we've created is a culture where we celebrate this. We celebrate the Zuckerbergs, right? And we have new startups, like who's heard of Spritz? Anyone heard of Spritz? It's a very awesome way of reading. It's probably the first revolution in reading since reading. It's a new way of reading, and it's great for small screens like watches, etc., right? What's their business model? They're a new startup. They're eager. They're hungry. What's their business model? To read what you're reading. They have an SDK that they give for free. And when I was speaking at a conference called Thinking Digital, their CEO was there giving a talk as well, and he said, you know what? Take our SDK, make applications. In fact, we'd really love it if you made some email apps. Why? And what about the Internet of Things? Who's excited about the Internet of Things? Yes, right? It's about things now, people. Like Nest, right? The thermostat that knows when you're home, knows when you're not, etc. And of course, what happened? At the beginning of this year, Google bought Nest for $3.2 billion. Right? That's January, right? And then Nest said, we're not going to share the data with Google. Don't worry about it. Yeah. $3.2 billion was just because they like our logo. And they're really nice devices, right? And that was January 13th. And then Nest, Google Nest, it's a bit confusing, just stay with me, bought Dropcam, a camera that watches your home, right? That you put inside your home, right? And then they said, but you know, Dropcam is going to be under the same license, the same rules. So it's under Nest's privacy policy, which means that the data won't be shared with anyone. That's June 20th, okay? The data won't be shared with anyone. It's under the Nest privacy policy. And then 4 days later, Nest to share information with Google for the first time. And what are we doing? We're kind of going, the water's kind of nice, isn't it? Yeah, it's lovely. I'm really enjoying this. So the Internet of Things, if you as an individual do not have ownership and control, is the Internet of Things that spy on you. Have you heard of wearables and the quantified self? The quantified self, if you do not have ownership and control, is the surveilled self. The ifs are important. Technology is just a multiplier. It doesn't care what it multiplies. You give it bullshit, it will multiply bullshit very well. You give it something meaningful, it will multiply that. So we have an option to make a difference here. So that's the problem, right? And if we leave it here, we're just going to have a room full of very depressed people. So what's the alternative, right? The alternative, as you're probably aware, is free. And I don't mean free as in cost. English is a terrible language for this, because we have one word overloaded with two very different meanings. Free as in cost, zero money, but free also as in liberty, or free as in freedom. And freedom is hard. I mean it, literally. It's hard to use. All right? This is the problem that we have with open and free, especially in the consumer market. I got one of these phones, and I now have 3 different versions of it because I keep wanting to try it. And I lived with it for a week. This is how you evaluate technologies. Don't just evaluate it on feature lists or on ideology. Take it, live with it for a week. Does it empower you or does it enfeeble you? I lived with it for a week. Okay? This was its hello. This was the phone when I first turned it on. It said, "What date is it?" This was hello. Now, unless you happen to be a muscle-bound German actor that comes back from the future to destroy humankind, what date is it should not be your hello, right? And not only that, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that nobody bought this phone in 1980, right? Why are you making me scroll through over 30 years just to be able to set the date? Why do I even have to set the date? That was hello. So it was kind of a rude hello. This was the opening screen of the Maps app. Now, if you can't read it, that's okay. Neither could I. This was the Maps app itself. There's a button on that lower corner, the one with the circle in it, that I have never been able to hit. It became a casual game. You know, when I was bored, if I'm on a train, I would open the app and be like, "Can I hit the button?" It was like my own personal Flappy Bird. I'm sorry to report that it's a game that I never successfully completed. This was me sending a direct message to my girlfriend on Twitter. Now, if you can't see what I'm typing, that's okay. Neither could I. The keyboard is covering what I was typing. And perhaps more importantly, or most importantly, in that week, this is the Train Times website, or the app, whatever we call it these days, not displaying properly. Okay, this tells you when trains are arriving, when they're departing, etc. So because it didn't work, I went to London Bridge Station in the UK. If you've ever had the misfortune of taking a train in the UK, I do apologize. I have to do it on a regular basis. It builds character. But on this occasion, all the trains from London Bridge Station were cancelled. And I did not know that. So I went to London Bridge Station, and it meant, as the result, I got home to my girlfriend and to my dog 2 hours later than I would have. So I lost, basically, 2 hours of time that I could have spent with the people that I love. This is no small thing. The things that we make affect people's lives. The things that we make are experiences that people have, which are in a set of finite experiences that they will only have in their lives, right? That's it. You have a set of experiences that you have, and then you die, and it's over. So I think it's very important that we respect the quality of those experiences. This did not do that. And we can't do that. We can't say, "Hey, it's open, though. You should use it because it's open." Yeah? No. That's arrogant. And we can't compete with that. Because this is a symptom of the age of features, where features were important. The era of Microsoft. They could compete until things became commoditized. What became commoditized? Features. Today, we live in the age of experiences. One of the companies that makes one of those remotes understands it. And you can see that they do, because the design of their product is a symptom of their understanding that, and is a symptom of the organizational structure that leads to it, right? So, question, why was that experience so bad on Firefox OS? Was it just incompetence? I don't know. Where does Mozilla get over 90% of its revenue? Now, if I were to pay 90% of your salary, how would you treat me? Would you like me? Or would you spend every day trying to build alternatives to me and trying to piss me off? This isn't corruption in the old sense. This isn't someone from Google going, here's some money, put it into your drawer and do the things that we tell you. This is institutional corruption. As Lawrence Lessig calls it, it is a system of influence, an economy of influence. So what does Mozilla do because they get 90% of their revenue from Google is not the right question to ask. Maybe a better question is, what does Mozilla not do because they get 90% of their revenue from Google that they would otherwise perhaps be doing? This is institutional corruption. But there is an alternative, and there are alternatives, and we can build alternatives. And this is what I'm working on. Because there's hope. There is always hope. And what we're trying to do is to design that hope. I run an initiative called Independent Technology, or INDY for short. We're a social enterprise. And we're trying to build both alternatives to these and also to spur other people and educate other people to build alternatives to these. And we have a manifesto. And our manifesto is very, very simple. It says that we need to start building different organizations. The organizations that exist today are part of the problem. They will not fix it. Organizational change, that radical, is very difficult, if not impossible. The organizations we build have to be independent. Of what? Independent of vested interests. If you get into the venture capital cycle, you've lost control. I'm sorry. You will not be able to create an alternative. There are other ways of funding your enterprise, as we're doing. I sold a family home. That's how I'm bootstrapping this year. We're going to crowdfunding in November, right? We can take other forms of investment that don't involve equity. We can have revenue-based investment where our needs are aligned. But it's not a short-term game. We're thinking about the long-term future. For me, success is whether I'm doing this in 20 years' time. I was talking to a friend of mine, Peldi, who runs Balsamiq Mockup. Some of you might have used it. And we were in Vegas, and we're sitting down over drinks, and I said, Peldi, what's your exit strategy for this, you know? And he gave me the best answer anyone could have. He said, my exit strategy is that my children inherit the company. This is the kind of thinking we need if we're going to solve the societal problems that we're faced with today. These organizations have to be sustainable. They have to be profitable and sustainable, but they can grow organically. If today the norm in the tech field with Google and Facebook is factory farming, this is organic farming, and it will grow in that way as well. The organizations we build have to be diverse. I think this is a very good audience in order to make this point. Because unless we have diversity as a core tenet, we're going to be a homogeneous group of people trying to solve problems for a diverse society. We're not going to do that, because you can only really design for yourself. Let me rephrase that. If you're a great designer and you're designing for a different audience, and there's a great designer who is part of that audience designing for themselves, you're never going to be able to compete with those people. So since you can't be that person, you can create an organization where that person is represented. That's why diversity matters. Diversity is not makeup. Diversity is not superficial. We need to have diversity at our core if we're going to tackle these problems. And the solutions that we create have to be led by design, because features are a commodity today. And the products that we create through these organizations will be beautiful. And I don't mean aesthetically. I mean in terms of how they work, how they empower people, holistically beautiful. They will be free, as in freedom. Not open. Open doesn't mean anything to me, because open means so many things. It means anything from open to closed. Free has a much more definite meaning. They need to be accessible. We need to be able to reach a large group of people, society at large. The problem that we are facing, where this battle is taking place, is the consumer space. It's being fought with consumer devices. And they have to be distributed in their topology. If we have centers, even if it's decentralized, decentralized doesn't mean that there are no centers. Decentralized means there are several centers. And because of economies of scale, those centers grow and they coalesce until we get the sort of monopolies that we have today with Google, Facebook, etc. We need to have an equally weighted topology, a distributed one. And if we do these, with these alternatives, we can give people their own homes. We can start them off in a safe place instead of putting them in a hostile environment and saying, protect yourself. We can start them off in a safe place that is private by default, and then give them control and ownership. And if we can do this, then we can create a future where our digital selves have the same rights as our corporeal selves. And we can build a future in which we have freedom, in which we have human rights, and in which we have democracy. Thank you very much. Thank you.